Okay, so today I'm just going to do a quick, three equations going through again what we talked about yesterday, which was solving trig equations. So the big thing that you want to really think about is you're getting the trig function on a side by itself. Okay, now if you have a square, quadratic, you're going to have to factor. So the two factoring techniques, if you are factoring, you are either using greatest common factor or trinomial factoring. Now, with greatest common factor, can you take something out? Trinomial, make sure that all your trig functions are the same. So you can't factor a trinomial with an x squared and a y. So your trig functions have to be the same. So think of just how do I solve? I get the thing that I'm trying to find on a side by itself, but if it's more than just to the first power, I'm going to have to do some factoring. So, question like this, 2 sine squared equals sine of x. You cannot divide by sine. If you think of really what I try to sort of show people is this is really 2x squared minus x. And if you were going to do that, you would factor out an x. Well, you're going to factor out a sine x. When you factor that sine x out, you now have 2 sine x minus 1. Zero product property, just like equations. Each factor gets set equal to 0. Sine equals 0. 2 sine x minus 1 equals 0. Now this is linear. So how do you solve a linear equation? You get x on a side by itself. So I'm going to add 1. 2 sine x equals 1. Divide by 2. Sine equals 1/2. Now when you're solving, if we go back up here, you're finding the angle that gives you that number from 0 to 2 pi. So this goes back to the previous unit. Now with sine x equals 1/2, you want to think, okay, where is sine positive? Quadrant 1, quadrant 2. This would be 1 over 2. That would be 1 over 2. Well, what angle is that? 30 degrees. It's in radians. Pi over 6. In that quadrant, 5 pi over 6. Now, where does sine equal 0? Most people, some people will look at the picture. Most people, I want you to just think of these points. Here's our unit circle. Okay, 1, 0, 0, 1, negative 1, 0, 0, negative 1. Remember that sine is y. So where is your y coordinate? 0. Well, my y coordinate is 0 there and 0 there. So that would be 0 and pi. So I have 4 answers that would work for that equation. Next one. So I got sine squared minus cos squared. I cannot factor something out. Those are not like. You have 2 choices. You either plug in for sine squared, plug in for cos squared. Doesn't matter. So let's say I'm like, okay, I'm going to plug in for sine squared. Sine squared is 1 minus cos squared. I still have this minus cos squared. So I actually now have 1 minus 2 cos squared. Well, if you think of what do you do when you just have an x squared? You get x squared on a side by itself and you square root. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to subtract 1 divide by -2. So now I would have cos squared equals positive 1 over 2. How do you get rid of a square? You square root. Cos of x plus or minus the square root of 1/2. Well, the square root of 1/2 is 1 over radical 2. Now, it is plus or minus. You're finding really every quadrant. So, what angle gives you 1 over radical 2? Well, 45. But it's in every quadrant. So I would have pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, 5 pi over 4, 7 pi over 4. 4 answers. Last one, it's a cube. Well, I mean, again, what would you do with 7x cubed minus 21x? I hope you would tell me that you would take out a 7x. So I'm taking out a 7 tan x. What am I then left with? Tan squared minus 3. And I mean, I could distribute that and show that that's what I get. Once I get there, set them equal to 0. So 7 tan x equals 0. Divide by 7, tan is 0. Here, it's a square. So I add 3, square root. I would have plus or minus radical 3. So then I have to think, well, where is that going to happen? Well, anything with 0, now 0 and 1 for sine and cosine, but tangent, just 0. So you would think to yourself, I wrote those wrong, with these points, 1, 0, 0, 1, -1, 0, 0, -1. Tangent is y over x. Well, you're going to get 0 when your y is 0. Well, where is that? At 0 and pi. Where is tangent radical 3 over 1? Well, that's a 60-degree angle. It's plus or minus, so it's in every quadrant. So what are those multiples of 60 degrees? Pi over 3, 2 pi over 3, 4 pi over 3, 5 pi over 3. And then you would also have the 0 and pi from there. So there's 3, I guess, that involve factoring. Hopefully that helps.